This episode of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls is brought to you by Outdoor Pro Shop, LLC. Outdoor Pro Shop is a family-owned and operated firearms dealer and sporting goods retailer. They have pay-over-time options, a rewards program, and customer service satisfaction that is unmatched. They might not be the biggest, but they strive to be the best. Contact them today at 240-360-1298 or visit them on the web at www.outdoor-pro-shop.com. That's Outdoor Pro Shop, 240-360-1298. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls. Man, I tell you, we just ran one of our newest ads there, Outdoor Pro Shop, LLC, out of Maryland. That's an online gun retailer and outdoor retailer. So check them out when you get a chance. So, man, we've had spring gobbler season in full swing here in West Virginia, and birds have been taking some dirt naps.
Yeah, they have.
I tell you. So, been a really busy couple weeks getting ready up for this opening season here for spring gobbler in West Virginia. Everybody and their brother's been wanting mouth calls.
Oh, yeah.
So coming home from lunch from my regular job, making mouth calls at night, sleeping making mouth calls. Everybody's wanting mouth calls. So. But, hey, that's a good thing, right? So we appreciate all of our customers this season, this year. You know, starting in January, we started off with the trade show season. It's been awesome. We've done 4 different trade shows this year, so it's been a good year so far. So let's keep it up. We appreciate everybody that's listening and buying products. So
yeah, it was nice to bounce back like that from last year's COVID.
I know,
and all that.
COVID and stuff like that, man, it's just crazy. So I got Dan Hall here with me tonight, co-host, and I got Dave Young here on production. He's in a little different environment here because we got a lot of new stuff coming in. So
yeah.
He's going crazy over there. But hey,
he's loving it.
That's what he does best. You know.
That's right.
All right. So tonight we've got this is our kind of our legislative session that we have with Jason Webb, and he is managing member of Capital Advocates LLC, based out of Charleston. So Jason Webb, how you doing this evening, sir?
Hey, boys, I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Doing great.
Awesome. So basically what we just wanted to start off with is how was the legislative session this year in Charleston, and, you know, what was some of the major topics regarding the outdoors in general and just, you know, things that are going to affect West Virginia and nationwide because, you know, it's not just West Virginia that these things affect. It's going to affect a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was a pretty incredible year. Really, for me and my client, which is one of my clients is the National Shooting Sports Foundation. As you guys know, the National Shooting Sports Foundation is the trade association for the firearms industry. So that's your suppliers, your manufacturers, and your retailers. And when I say retailers, I'm talking about mom and pop shops where you pick up your 30-06 shells out in the middle of nowhere. Those folks join the trade association that helps protect them and their interests and look after them, not only on state levels across the country, but also on the federal level. And so one of the major issues that we were really concerned about is this new merchant code for gun retailers.
Mm-hmm.
That, there was a lot of pressure from activists that wanted to help track weapon purchases across the country. And so what they were going to do is they were going to force the 4 credit card companies, which is MasterCard, Visa, Discover, and American Express, to utilize this new specific merchant code to track every weapon purchase that every American makes in the United States. And the National Shooting Sports Foundation, along with their friends at the National Rifle Association, got together and tried to figure out how to combat this and stop this.
Good.
Because the international group, they adopted this new merchant code, and they were trying to force that across the rest of us. And they were, being forced by people like Elizabeth Warren and the new mayor there of New York City, Mayor Davis, and others. And so the National Shooting Sports and the NRA sort of got together, late fall, early winter, started talking about this. And then when the session came up in West Virginia, Riley Moore, who was the state treasurer of West Virginia, put together a bill that essentially said that you could not you couldn't search anyone unless you had a warrant. So Treasurer Moore was trying to protect not only your Second Amendment rights, but also your Fourth Amendment rights, which is essentially a protection from illegal searches and seizures.
Yep.
So Second Amendment and Fourth Amendment. And, Visa and MasterCard started contacting us and contacting folks in D.C. and tried to get us on the same page. And the Mississippi legislature and the Bankers Association down there, they tried to come up with a plan and it's called a compromise. And we in West Virginia refused to compromise. So states started moving in a different direction, working with Visa and MasterCard. And Riley Moore and our Senate president and our speaker, Roger Hanshaw, and again, Senate President Craig Blair, those guys, we all banded together, said, no, we're going to go in this other direction. And we may be the only person out there doing it this way, but we're going to make sure that no one has access to that information unless they have an actual warrant for it. They just can't request it. So nobody can have that information.
That's awesome.
But because there were a bunch of different legislation moving, and ours was moving the fastest, the MasterCard and Visa and others said, hey, we're no longer going to adopt these MCC codes that are firearm specific because West Virginia is creating this inconsistency landscape. And essentially we frustrated them till they left. They picked up their ball and took their bat and went home. And that's what we wanted. And I'm telling you, it was led by Riley Moore, and Riley's now running for Congress. And although this sounds like a pitch, we need people like Riley Moore in Congress to combat this stuff on the federal level in Congress. So anybody that's north of Charleston in the northern panhandle or listeners out in the eastern panhandle, that's your man for Congress because he led this charge to protect your Second Amendment and your Fourth Amendment rights. So that was huge that West Virginia led this charge. Our little state led this charge against the credit card companies, this international group, and stopped them from adopting these merchant codes and forcing that on all the retailers out there. Huge, huge.
Yes, it is. That is huge. I'm glad that we was able to be the forefront in that in this state. I mean, this state is very heavily gun friendly. Obviously we have our concealed carry licenses you can get with great reciprocity. We're open carry, and we're the constitutional carry state. So obviously we're big into our guns here in this state. So I'm glad we was able to be the forefront of that.
So that was
we were sitting in a meeting with all those folks, and they were on the line. Everybody was talking, and the couple of us from West Virginia I just started shaking my head no, and I started getting kind of red faced when I get mad. I can't play poker because if I had a good hand, you'd know it.
Right.
I just started shaking my head, and finally they said, "What?" And I said, "No, we're not going to follow anybody else. We're going to do what we came here to do, and we're going to stop this right here in West Virginia. And if others want to go in different directions, and go in different directions, because I believe that the other direction that they were going in, I'm not an attorney, but I did pass English, I think, in the 8th grade. And so therefore I know that these other bills, these other pathways would probably violate the Interstate Commerce Clause. And so what Visa and MasterCard wanted us to all do is all of us get under one tent, agree to the same piece of legislation, pass that same legislation across all 20 or 30 states that was running this, and then they could run into federal court, challenge under interstate commerce, and essentially just have it nullified. And if it's nullified, then they could move forward with their adoption and forcing all these merchants to have this MCC code. So every time you went and purchased a gun, somebody would know about it.
Right.
So we did not follow the others. We were sort of on our own, a lone wolf, if you will, out here on the side, watching everybody. and they were led like sheep. We were the wolf on the hill watching, and we were able to stop it. But again, that was not only me at the National Shooting Sports Foundation. I just represent them here in West Virginia, but also the NRA lobbyist here. But Riley Moore was the one who was leading that charge. So I can't say enough great things about Riley Moore. He's a good dude. I've known him a long time, but that's your guy for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. And those are the types of people that we need in Congress. People who are fair-minded, understand these issues, and don't care about being criticized. They're going to stand up for what's right. So I'm just telling you, it was a huge, huge, huge win, not only for West Virginia, but really every Second Amendment citizen, who respects the Second Amendment out there. That's who this victory was for. And if anybody in the country wants to thank an individual, it's Riley Moore, West Virginia State Treasurer.
Awesome. Now,
it's good stuff.
How would that have worked? I mean, if it would have passed, thank God it's not. But
what
if you'd have went and bought cash? What if you'd have paid cash? Would there have been a stop to that?
No. If you would have paid cash, you would have been fine.
Okay.
But most firearms are, a couple $100 and up to several $1,000s, and so a lot of times, working men and women, I mean, they'll buy something because they're not going to carry that much cash necessarily with them into a store,
right?
And purchase, you think about, a really nice Savage, $750 for a carbon wrap fiber. You go buy a Kimber pistol. I mean, whatever it is, you're just not going to carry that much cash in. It would have forced a lot of people to probably go to cash because people would have been really concerned, Dan, right? I mean, to have your stuff tracked, but not everyone can afford to do that. So most people will put it on a credit card and maybe pay it off over 2 or 3 months or pay it off at the end of the month so they don't incur any, interest.
Sure.
But I mean, that's what it would have done on any credit card purchases. There would have been this specific MCC, a merchant code for weapons and guns. And I mean, that's almost begins the whole national registry, which I believe was the intent of the legislation.
Absolutely.
But again, Riley Moore said, I mean, he didn't say no. He said, hell no, we're not going to do this. In fact, Florida reached out to Riley Moore. I think the state treasurer down there in Florida and several other states started, contacting us here in West Virginia and saying, hey, we've got this issue. How do we combat it? And so what another way to do this was essentially prohibit them from utilizing it. Well, if you prohibited them from utilizing the merchant codes, they could just say, well, we're not going to accept credit cards for gun purchases. Well, all of a sudden now that hurts, people that don't have that much cash laying around and they want to take their boy deer hunting, or, we're in turkey season. Maybe they want to go buy their son a 410 and use the new TSS shells, or they want to buy a 20 gauge and use TSS shells, the tungsten shells, and and they don't have one, and so they want to go buy one, and they want to put it on a credit card. And if you stop them from using a credit card, we're just afraid that they were going to all of a sudden discriminate, which they do so much. They're going to discriminate against the firearms industry, and then they weren't going to accept credit card payments for it. That's what we're afraid. But we also thought that if they did that, essentially the credit card companies would go out and file a federal lawsuit and try to say that this is unconstitutional because it violates the interstate commerce clause. And, one state can't tell another state sort of what to do in their state as far as sales goes and those sort of things. So, but we're glad it didn't pass. But again, Treasurer Moore stepped up and said, hey, this is my issue. I'm running with it, and we're going to see it to the end. And we passed it. We were the first state to pass something. Other states started passing, other versions of it. But literally, I thought I had it laying around here, but it says, hey, there's several bills advancing and it's creating an inconsistency. And for that reason, we've decided to pause our work on the implementation of the firearms specific MCC code. And that was MasterCard's statement. And Visa said, hey, we're going to take a pause because of significant confusion and legal uncertainty the legislative proposals have created. And Discover said in January or February that they were going to go ahead and adopt them. And then we frustrated them in March, and then both American Express and Discover agreed with Visa and MasterCard to not move forward on the adoption. So it's gone away for the moment. It doesn't mean it's going to go away forever. But at least the National Shooting Sports Foundation and the National Rifles Association, they're standing up for their members and being watchdogs on this.
Now, do you think this will be something we'll see every couple of years for a while now? Or
I do, yes, sir, I do. I think it's not a matter of if, just a matter of when that this thing will probably come back.
Sure,
yes.
yeah.
So you're saying that's the major thing that you all went over there?
Yeah, I mean that's the major thing that we did related to, the outdoor industry, the hunting, fishing, I mean, for sure, tracking of firearms, because we buy firearms for various reasons, whether it's enjoying, the shooting sports, the people go out and love, I've got family and cousins that love to do long range shooting now. I'm just lucky to hit a pie plate at 100 yards, so I'm good with that. But, a lot of people are into long-range shooting, and that's become a real passion for people. And women are getting into it. And girls, we've got family friends. Their daughter is a competitive shooter. She shoots down here, I think, at the Putnam County shooting range, and now she's trying to actually work her way into possibly getting a college scholarship to be on the shooting team. So that's awesome. But every time you would go and purchase a gun, someone's going to have access to everything you purchased, and it's going to create some sort of registry, and then you can just go pull that out. If you're a bank, you can just willy-nilly decide to send that to whoever you want. Guess where this whole issue came up, or where it all started, right? It's that old salsa commercial, New York City.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it started. So,
Pace Picante.
yeah, that's right, New York City. So, I'm just glad that our Riley Moore jumped in there, and of course, National Shooting Sports was there with him, and the NRA was with him, and we frustrated them, and they should not have this. So the law was passed in West Virginia. If somebody wants to try to move forward on this, if these MCC codes are somehow forced on us in some way, our banks in West Virginia are not allowed to give that information to anyone, essentially without a subpoena. And subpoenas generally come from either courts or, various law enforcement jurisdictions that get them from the courts that would have access to that. That's different. If there's some criminal activity or something going on and they're doing an investigation, then that's fine. We're law-abiding citizens. We're all for that. But just banks being able to, essentially the bank in New York City said, hey, if we think there's suspicious activity, they can just think that there's suspicious activity. They want to send that off to different people.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So what if somebody doesn't like you? Then they could just send it off. Who knows?
They can shut them down anytime they want to.
Sure.
I'm telling you, gentlemen, I don't mean to belabor the point, but this is huge for Americans.
Yeah.
Again, Second Amendment rights and Fourth Amendment rights. Little old West by God, Virginia stood up, whooped their hind end, sent them running with their tails tucked, and other states started following our lead on this.
That's awesome.
And Governor Justice couldn't wait till this thing, sort of dropped on his desk so he could sign it. But
right.
This was a good, solid win for conservatives and respectful Second Amendment owners. That's what this was.
Awesome. So there wasn't anything brought up about the four-wheelers on WMAs
there's some other. Yeah, there was a bill brought up about four-wheelers on wildlife management areas.
Yeah, that's one I wanted to hit on as well, because we talked with backwoods or backcountry hunters and anglers.
Backcountry. Yep.
Yeah, those guys reached out to me too, and I sort of helped them understand the process and how to monitor it and watch it, and they were able to utilize social media to kind of get the word out, and essentially Cabway lingo, which is the state park there that's a part of essentially Cabell, Wayne, and Mingo counties in that little triangle area down there. They've utilized off-road vehicles and four-wheelers to be able to traverse through their trail system that they're developing there. And so that's going to be kind of a destination for people who want to ride ATVs and those sort of things. And that's fine. It was almost like a sacrificial lamb, but those folks are looking for ways to diversify their economy and drive some business and drive some tourists in that area, and that's fine. But then they started to take it a little further and say, well, let's let DNR maybe look at developing some other paths and trails, heads, and so forth that go to state parks and state forests and other things. And it just seemed to be, the proverbial camel's nose under the tent. Before long, you're wide open. And, those wildlife management areas, people really enjoy getting out and hunting those. We did it as a side note. We were talking about, Mike, you and I were talking offline. Jackson, my son, and I, we've got a lease in Kentucky, and we went down there the first weekend in April, which is when the youth season came open. And apparently we didn't know that a hurricane was scheduled to come through town Friday night and Saturday morning with 65, 75-mile-an-hour winds and 2 or 3 inches of rain. We actually couldn't get into our lease. And so we had to hunt on public lands down there. That's wonderful for people who don't have private properties. We talked about this with Sunday hunting, right?
Yep.
You don't have the opportunity to go out and hunt, and you have to utilize public land. I think the last thing you want is it to be turned into an ATV trail system. So that stopped. And then the only other side note is, in West Virginia, we have a 3 buck limit, which is really not a limit. That's a lot of bucks to try to kill in a year. I mean, you can kill a bunch of does, and people are just, how they are. They don't want to kill something without horns on it. But the does, as I've told you 1,000 times, taste 100 times better than, that rutted up meat that come off a buck. But they're going to probably reduce that 3 to 2 at the April meeting. It's going to be on the DNR Commission's agenda. I attended that meeting in January, where they sort of set the stage for that meeting in April. And that will most likely pass, and then that will go into effect January 1 of next year. So I believe, sitting here today, that January 1 of next year, West Virginia will have reduced its buck limit from 3 down to 2.
I'm okay with that.
2 bucks.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
That's the other thing.
Yep, good deal. Now, was there anything mentioned about extra property for the New River Gorge section for the national park? I thought they were supposed to.
Only not, so that wouldn't have been done through the state. That's sort of a federal program.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a federal park, but there was an additional purchase of property there. It's definitely not the same amount that they took for folks that, used to hunt in that area, but they have been able to purchase or get a piece of property down there that's, a couple hundred acres or several hundred acres. That's, going to be a new sort of federal wildlife management area that's going to allow sportsmen to go on and hunt like they used to be able to. But as I understand, it was 1,000 acres or something they had before, or a couple thousand acres they had before. And then the New River Gorge Federal Park sort of took that area over. And so they were looking to find another piece of property to sort of move. It's not the same, but I appreciate the federal government. Shelley Moore Capito, U.S. Senator Shelley Moore Capito, and U.S. Senator Joe Manchin were instrumental in trying to get some of that property available to sportsmen and sportswomen. So
good deal. So pretty good topics there. So you and Jackson have been hitting on several birds.
Yeah, like I said, we went to Kentucky for the opening day of youth season, and literally just got blown out of our lease down there and couldn't get into it because the creek was up about 1.5 feet, and there was just no way to ford it. And so we were, sort of forced to go find public land. And we'd never really hunted public land in Eastern Kentucky, and we found a little piece of property that was sort of nearby, 20, 30 minute drive from where we were. And we, pulled up our topo maps, and Jackson really likes HuntWise, and I use Onyx. And so we were sort of comparing, and we found a WMA down there, and, we don't really get to it until probably 10 o'clock that morning, because we were still trying to figure out how to get into our lease. And we pull in this little parking lot, and we get out, and we've got everything loaded up, and the camera and the decoys, and we take 2 steps, and a Kentucky DNR officer rolls in on us. And you just smile. I mean, we're not doing anything wrong, but it still makes you,
it still gets that heart beating
a little bit, because you just want to make sure you're doing everything right. And when you hunt in a couple of different states, it's always important to read those, specific regulations to that state that you're in that day. And
the fine print.
Listen, he was the nicest gentleman. We had our licenses there, and he said, you don't have to have a paper copy. You can actually take a digital copy of it, so you can take a picture of it with your phone, and then
that's good.
Most people always carry their phone with you, and I'm a little old school. I just kind of carry the paper and didn't even think of it. Of course, Jackson's already taken pictures of mine and his, put it on his phone.
He's like, I got you, Dad. I got you covered.
I'm still trying to fold it back the same way I had unfolded it because I don't like extra creases in my licenses. And so
that sounds like
trying to fold all that stuff back, put it in my backpack. And he was just super nice. I mean, asked us if we had any questions, asked if we, just anything, told us approximate boundary lines from where we were in relationship to some of the, topography that was around us, and gave us some other suggestions for some other public lands in the area. I mean, it was a wonderful experience, a wonderful exchange, a wonderful interaction, if you will. And so we, head up this holler and get all the way to the top of the mountain, and we're calling, and the wind's starting to kick up, and we come back down out of the mountain, and I told Jackson, I said, down here at this field, I said, if I were a turkey, that's where I'd be. I wouldn't be up high because it's awful windy. I'd just be down here because turkeys have a tendency to like, if it's light rain, they like to be in a field.
Sure.
They don't want to, drag their feathers around. And if it's windy, they like to be where they can see a lot of things because it makes them vulnerable to predators. So I told Jackson, I said, hey, if I were down here, there's, you never know. We might pop down here and run into a gobbler. And we popped down, and I looked down in the field, and I'm like, I just kind of out loud, because how the stream of consciousness is. I looked down there, I'm like, Jackson, why is there a goose in the middle of the field? He's like, I'm like, is that a turkey? And I popped down, and he goes, no, that's a goose. And then he pops down beside me, and goes, that's a turkey. I was like, that's what I thought it was. Second thought. So we kind of eased back up like a periscope out of a submarine up out of the top of the tall of the grass, and we're looking at him, and he's easing down, and he's coming up and looking around. I mean, it's like a German U-boat kind of, submarine maneuver. We're playing like a game of battleships here, right? In this field. And so I've got to get him to the left. I got to get him over along the brush line where we can kind of slip our way up and try to close the distance on him. And the bird actually kind of moves back to the left again along the brush line and kind of gets out of the middle of the field. And we sneak in there. Jackson gets within about 40 yards, and then I just whisper to him that I'm going to back out, and I'm going to ease out into the field a little bit and put up these decoys. And we love a Jake with a breeding hen. Just a little combo. It's a killer combo is what we call it.
Yeah.
And so we got this killer combo, two decoys are a lot easier to carry than a whole bag full, because we seem to have a bunch of different brands that we've used through the years. But so I'm easing out, and now I'm doing things that I've never done. I'm doing like these planks, which are like exercises. And I'm because it's wet. I'm trying not to get completely soaked, because we still got we can hunt all day in Kentucky. That's one thing I appreciate about Kentucky and
nice.
Ohio is that in the youth season, you can hunt all day. In West Virginia, you got to be out of the woods by 1 o'clock. And West Virginia needs to change that law, especially for youth, because some kids, homework and baseball and all the other things going on in their life.
Yeah.
Maybe it's better to take them turkey hunting in the afternoon. Maybe it's not take them turkey hunt at 5 o'clock in the morning, trying to get them to come off a roost or something. Maybe it's better to ease them into it so they enjoy it. And then they're wanting to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning the next year to go. But West Virginia got to be out of the woods at 1. You all know that.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I've talked to several people this year, and their kids, they've got soccer and they've got baseball and things like that. And on Saturdays, they're having practice and different things like that. So these kids aren't getting out of their practices until 10:30, 11 o'clock. Yeah. So if they're wanting to get a bird, they either got to go real early, like you're talking, or they
have to skip practice or skip soccer, skip whatever the activity is. And unfortunately, we're having to get in this world. We have to trade things off, and so anyway, that's a little, it's a point to make for your listeners is, different states have different regulations, but in Kentucky, we knew we were going to hunt all day, so I didn't want to be, slopping wet, muddy. trying to do this. And so, I'm doing these kind of elbow planks on my toes going across this field, trying to keep my midsection off the ground. And so I sneak out, and there he is. I can see him. He's got one of those kind of like blue looking heads, and he fanned out on me a little bit, and I'm stuck. And so I'm like hiding behind these two decoys, and I'm 210, so they ain't a lot of hiding behind decoys, but I feel like I've got the elevation on him a little bit. And so, I kind of, do this, funny little crawl back, and now I'm trying to give him hand signals, and I'm just making them up as I go. And I'm doing this like turkey wing, and I'm trying to tell him it's around the corner, and I'm pointing this way, and then he moves. He starts to move out sort of in the lane. I'm like telling him, no, get back. And he's going back, and he's throwing his palms up. Like, I don't understand what you're saying, which I get, because I can't yell to him because the wind's up so loud. But we did a cat and mouse game with this bird, and eventually he slipped off on us. And so we left. We went and hunted another wildlife management area. It was, a beautiful piece of property, but the wind was 60 miles an hour. And
wow.
It's hard to call and even hear anything call you back in that wind. So about 4:30, we shut it down. And let me be honest with your listeners. I was slopping wet and muddy because whatever plank I thought I was doing in the field was really just a belly drag. And so I was ready to get out of my clothes and come home. Somebody says you ought to work out. I said, well, I tried lifting weights, but they were heavy, so I haven't really gone back and done that much. So we tried to find a place the next day. We actually went back to the place where we saw the gobbler. We actually decided just to ford the creek, which I don't recommend. And, at 5:30 in the morning, going across a muddy creek, in the dark, but, we did it. We made it across the other side. We hunted till about, 10:30 in the spot. We slipped around a little bit, and we didn't hear any birds. We didn't see any birds. And so we went back to the first wildlife management area, just kind of worked the edges a little bit there. Again, nothing. Got back in the truck, and we went and found a new spot in a new county coming home. And I told Jackson, I said, man, I feel like they're just going to be out here on the end of this little point. Let's just ease our way out this flat. And we got out there, and there was an old kind of clear cut that had a couple old lanes in it. And I look out, and there's two gobblers dragging beards across this thing. And I said, Jackson, there they are. And, we tried to put this sort of Mohegan sneaking on them. Again, I feel like I'm ducked down and no higher than the tallest grass. And I probably just look like I'm humped over and dragging stuff, man, but you feel like you're trying to do the right thing and make the moves on the bird. And, we get up as close as we possibly can, and I start calling, and I'm on the right side of the road, and he's on the left side of the road, and the bird comes out on the left side. Well, he can't see it, and I can see it, and I can't give him my, chicken wing, turkey wing signal because I know the bird's going to see it. And so he ducks back in the woods on us. Fine. We move back out into this sort of open area, and, we end up calling another one off, but there was a little bit of an elevation. He went on the other side of the elevation from us. When he came out, he was 60 yards away. Jackson's got a 20 gauge with TSS. It's just out of range. And that bird just went on. We couldn't get him back in. And then it became like an Abbott and Costello routine. Like, we'd call, and I'd say the bird would be on the right-hand side. We'd move to the right, and a gobbler would come out left. And so we'd move back to the middle, call, there'd be a call on the left, we'd start moving left, and a bird would come out right. So finally I just said, Jackson, we're not going anywhere. We're going to stay right here and take our chances. Well, at one point we'd been in the field so long not moving that the buzzers started flying around us. And I told Jackson, I said, buddy, I'm inspired that you're willing to lay here. We were there for about 4 hours. I mean, we hadn't moved. Once we got out there, we'd probably only moved 100 yards in 4 hours.
Wow.
Just trying to get, you got to get close enough.
Yep.
And so we didn't, but we stayed until sunset, and then we boogied home, and made excuses why I had him out so late. My wife when I got home, and that it was it's essentially a school night on Sunday.
Yep.
So, but he did it. He hunted his butt off, and that's why they call it hunting, boys.
That's
and you all know that. You all been there.
Yep.
And so then we bounced forward to this past weekend. West Virginia was opening season.
Well, before we get into
opening season,
that real quick, let's do our salute to valor, because Dan keeps looking at me like, oh my God, you forgot me. So I mentioned this hunt when we were supposed to do salute to valor, so that was my bad.
It was.
So after our salute to valor, Jason, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But
no. This is more important than any silly story I've got, gentlemen. With all due respect, this is very important. I admire and respect what you all do, honoring service.
So we'll go into that, and then we'll come right back in, because I want to hear. I was gonna say, I was gonna come back in and say, hey, didn't he get one? So we'll talk about that when we come back after this.
Yeah, all right.
You're going to have fun saying this name anyways.
Yeah, I know. All right, so tonight our salute to valor is going to go out to Trevor Seidenstricker from Gallipolis, Ohio. He served in the Army National Guard. He served for 12 years, where he acquired the rank of Staff Sergeant. He was stationed out of Moundsville. That was his duty location. He did 0 tours, but he had 3 OCONUS training events. 2 of them was to Germany and 1 to the Republic of Georgia. He was awarded 3 ARCOMs, 3 AAMs, 1 NDSM medal, 1 AFSM medal, 1 AFRM medal, 1 NOPDR medal, ASR, ARCOT medal, and he was also air assault. He was discharged in 2009. No, I'm sorry. His discharge date is 2029, so he is still active.
Yep.
So he plans to retire from the service. Yep. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
I'm glad he'll be able to retire and get a good benefits from the military.
Yeah, he's going to be a lifer. So there's a lot of them guys that get in there that's what they want to do for their whole life.
Yeah, I had intentions of it. I really did until I met the big green weenie. So we had difference of opinions, and I got out. So I have no hard feelings. I'd do it again if I could. But at the time, I was young and dumb. Stupid little things caused me to get away from it.
Yeah. Well, it's just life comes and goes at different things like that. I mean, you have kids and you have different things go on in your life, and a lot of these guys that start out in the military that become lifers end up marrying somebody on a base.
Sure.
Or something like that. So, but thank you, Trevor, for your service and your continued service for our country, and God bless you, sir.
Amen.
Thank you, Trevor. So, before you jump into your turkey thing, he's talking about that. But talking about that 1 o'clock thing. Yeah. So, Monday morning, I come off a hill, and I'm sitting out on the back porch, look over in the bottom in the field. There's 2 gobblers standing in the field at 1:13. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And of course, I'm going to screw with them. I grabbed the call and hit it a couple times, and both of them, boom, strapped,
they were
fanned
just
out.
Hammering, wasn't they?
I mean, they was. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
That's funny.
That's the way she rolls.
Yep. And that was across the creek, too.
It was. It was across the river, but.
Yep. All right, so going back into this, so you all were unsuccessful that one evening. And
we tried really hard in Kentucky, and I was really proud of Jackson for hanging in there and wanting to do it.
Oh yeah, sticking it out, man.
This is I love to do it, but I don't ever want to force anything on my kids, and I want them to whatever they want to do. I want to give them direction and help and assistance and pointers, and try to support them in some way and let them go down the path. And maybe that path, they don't end up like it, and they back up a few steps and they try something else out. And that's what we all want for our kids. So, but this past weekend, I went out early I had a break in the afternoon, and I was able to go to a farm down the road, and I had good cell service, so I could take some calls, and I just wanted to sit in there and kind of glass around at some fields and some areas of, I can get a truck in and even slip around on some ridge tops and look down in some hollers and just listen, really, more than anything else, because you all know they see you way before you see them, and they'll slip off the hill on you. Or you just see them running off the hill. And I didn't want to bust any out of there, blow any out of there early, but actually was able to locate a couple gobblers. They were on different sides, and that's fine. And so I decided to put up a ground blind because Jackson wanted to try to shoot a gobbler, a turkey with his bow.
Oh, and nice.
I said, Jackson, that's great, and I want to help you, but please understand the difficulty in this. I mean, if this is some sort of dive, this is a 9.9 difficulty rating. Like, the bird has to walk past your blind. And we've only got decoys, and we've only got the ability to kind of call them and try to call them in. And we got lucky last year. It was on the farm we hunted last year, and, we had gobblers come in on us, and Jackson, he busted one. It was his first turkey ever, and he shot it with a shotgun. So this year he wanted to raise difficulty levels, so we threw it out. Friday night, big windstorm comes through, right?
Yeah,
a red flag alert on the old cell phone, and I'm like, here we go again. And we get up early Saturday morning, we go, and sure enough, the blind's been blowed over, and it's just 60-mile-an-hour winds. There's nothing you can do, and so it only blowed over sort of halfway. So I was able to kind of toss it back, put the 2 stakes in the ground that had pulled out, and we're back in action. And we sat there, from 6:30 to 11:30. I mean, that's a pretty long time to sit. We had a couple hens come through, and we could hear gobblers around us. But I believe that any gobbler was sort of on that that first flat that's underneath the ridges, because they kind of get right underneath that, or sometimes along the ridge tops. As long as there's no winds, they like to roost up high. And the wind had just come through, and the storm had come through that kind of blew them down in the holler. But we didn't have a blind in the holler, and it's hard to run and gun with a bow, so we just stayed there. We hunted till 11:30. Our bellies got the best of us, and we come out and got an early lunch. And thought about running to Ohio, because again, you could hunt all day in Ohio, and we could grab the shotgun and run and gun over there, because we've got a couple farms we go hit. And, we just decided to come home and rest up and get some work done around the house. And I'd been okay, but my neighbor cut his grass for the first time this year, and that made my grass look like a hayfield, so I had to cut mine. And we got up next morning and went, and it was a quiet morning, Sunday morning, and we're sitting there in the blind, and just like last year, at right about 6:50, 7 o'clock, you started hearing them start to come off the roost. They started, yelping. The hens were yelping. The gobblers were gobbling. And we could hear gobblers behind us, but, we can't see them because, the blind. And then we're in front of an old barn. And so we just kind of put it in front of the barn to kind of blend in with the so we're not, daylight or skyline or anything there. It kind of looks a little more natural.
Sure.
And sure enough, we could tell something out about 11 o'clock from us, that there were a couple turkeys. But these turkeys, a couple of them didn't just sounded off. There was just something about them. I was talking to Mike offline about this, and about 7:45, after messing with them for a little while, here they came, and it was 3 gobblers and 4 jakes, and those jakes were the ones that were making these like half yelp sounds, and I'd really never heard that. But here come these 3 gobblers in, and they come right by the blind. And when they came by the blind, and they got in this little blind spot in the blind that we have set up so Jackson could draw in between the 2 windows, in the next window pane, that's where the decoys were. And those 3 gobblers just went in there and stood around that jake, just stared him down. And Jackson is at full draw, and he can't shoot because they're all together. And finally, one of the gobblers sort of slips around the other side and stops, and he's facing Jackson head on, but he's kind of looking at that jake. And I'm telling you, if I were this jake, I'd be trembling. And he lets that arrow fly. He hammers that turkey. That turkey takes about 4 steps and piles over, and they all start squalling and gobbling, and they start flogging this turkey. and the jakes are just running around, hollering and screaming. I mean, it was like, something you'd see in the Wild West. It was like a scalping going on. It was awful. I mean, it was just, they're jumping all over this bird. And then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 more gobblers come running down from our left and join in on it. And they're like fighting. And we got all this on film.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I've even heard of something
It
like that.
is, I believe we counted, essentially, I've never seen this many gobblers in a flock, but 11 gobblers. Of the 11, 4 were jakes.
Wow.
So 7 were longbeards, and one of them lay dead. So there were 6, and they were fighting and carrying on and just fired up. But he was able to harvest his first gobbler with his, he's pro staff for Obsession Bows, and so he got his new Nitro Ghost in and sighted it in, and that thing just shoots lights out. He hammered it.
Yeah.
He went back and looked at the footage. He was drawn back for 51 seconds.
Goodness gracious.
Which probably aided in the whole shoulder injury, because he'd injured his shoulder earlier this year in baseball, and so that wasn't helpful. But he held it back at 51 seconds before he hammered it.
That's crazy.
And we have been. Jackson was asked to do some filming for John and Gina Brunson with Addicted to the Outdoors. They have a new sort of series coming out called The Next Generation, and they've asked Jackson to be a part of that, which is just a blessing in and of itself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We're humbled that someone would, want to do something with your kid and take them further than I could ever do.
It's a great opportunity.
Oh yeah.
So when that comes out, I'll be sure and get it. But Mike, I got to say this: you and I first met, last year sometime, and we were just talking about lobbying, government relations, and how it intersects with the outdoors and laws that you have to follow, whether it's a buck limit or a Sunday hunting or some silly state trying to ban deer urine, stuff like that. There's this intersection, and that these regulations are created and they're sometimes modified or amended or changed. And, I appreciate you having me on. And we start talking about us. What we do is we just buy stuff like anybody, Walmart, wherever, Dick's Sporting Goods, wherever. Mm-hmm. And we use it. If we like it, great. If we don't, I won't say we throw it away, but, we may find somebody that doesn't have something like that, and we just sort of give it to them. And we've gone through all kinds of different, ground blinds and shotguns and bows, and I've shot every bow out there, the carbons and you name it. I probably had one over the last, 15 years. When we got a hold of you and you took me to your all shop where you guys are now, and you showed me your friction calls, I was really impressed with it. And you said, "Hey, I want to give you one. I want you guys to go out and use it." That zebra wood with the anodized aluminum call that you had made up and given to Jackson last week, because you knew we were going out.
Yep.
You said, "Hey, I want you to try this. We think we've got a real winner here." That was the call that created whatever the sound was that was different and unique. That was the one that drew him in, because we had a couple of other calls, and I free call. I don't use a call. I just call it out of my mouth.
Sure.
And normally I can call in any turkey. I've been really successful with that for the last 30 years of my life, but it wasn't working. And they were just hung up over there, and we figured there were hens over there, 100 and 150 yards away, and we just couldn't see them, or 100 yards away. We could hear them. We knew they were pretty close, but they just wouldn't seem to break the crest of the hill. And if they broke the crest of the hill there, they could see the jake and they could see the breeding hen. And then I went ahead and brought a third sort of feeder hen out just to kind of put it, near the blind, just to kind of, make sure that they weren't concerned about the blind. And that's what did it, man. They broke over the hill on us, and then we got assaulted. I thought we were going to have to fight our way out of there. So at one point,
that's crazy. Man, I tell you, that call is a screamer.
It is,
and it's
a screamer, dude. That's the best way to put it. It ought to just be called the screamer, because
there you go.
That thing just flat out brought them in. I mean, and I know that this is your show, and I know that you guys do this, but you hand make these calls just outside your studio there. I've
Yeah.
been there. I love it. I love the history of it. I love the tradition of it. I love what you guys are doing. I love that it's handmade. I love knowing where it's made and, where all the stuff comes from and the hardwoods and, the different strikers you guys make. I love that. I just appreciate it. I appreciate it.
The sad thing is we almost scrapped the zebra wood.
Yeah.
It was close. We had some discussions about it, and we almost quit carrying zebra wood calls until we figured that one out, and we was like, we can't. That call.
That one, Dan, is a winner in my book, and I'm glad. Well, I'd like to say it's in my vest. It's not. It's in Jackson's vest. I don't know if we'll ever go back in my vest, but
nice.
I did. That was the screamer, man. That one worked.
Well, we sure appreciate you guys too. It's just a blessing that we met, and I call up a high school friend, and I knew that he's a lobbyist and works along legislation and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, here our platform on the limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls is not just about the outdoors. Obviously, we're going to focus more on that, but
sure,
we've got God, family, country, and everything outdoors.
Sure,
so the country part of it is kind of like where it falls in with your legislation and this segment with you coming in and talking about these different things. And it's just awesome to give people that different perspective on what goes on behind the scenes with you guys and what you all do for us.
Yeah, a lot of people have no idea that the things that hit like that.
They don't.
Yep, you're right.
So,
I mean, I followed a little bit, but until I really got involved with the
backcountry outfitter guys.
No, it's the ones that lobby hard for the Second Amendments.
CDL,
Civil Defense.
Yeah, Citizens Defense League.
Citizens Defense League.
Yeah. Yep, CDL.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, until I got with them, I didn't have a clue per se. I mean, I followed somewhat, but they really can open your eyes to, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And this is how we're doing it.
Well, a key to a free society, and probably the biggest key, is an informed electorate.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
If people aren't informed, and I think that's a major problem with what's going on in America today is, you don't get news about the actual legislation that's hidden, and what you do get news about is half the time it's made up. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's
yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
It's not made up.
What's that?
What you're about to say.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's true.
That's right. We're lead right into this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So we do a verse of the day, try to on every episode. Tonight's verse of the day is from Acts 26 in verse 19, and it's just a short one, but it's got a lot of, I think it's got a lot of meaning. So this is Paul, and he's talking to King Agrippa. He says, I have not been disobedient to what was revealed to me from heaven. Another translation says the heavenly vision. And, I think that the Lord, each of us, he gives us giftings, and he gives us a desire on the inside and a vision, if we just tune into him, of what we should do, either with our lives or, when it comes to family or when it comes to a business or, whatever, all these different facets of life. But, we have to be obedient to that thing. We have to follow that thing that he placed on the inside of us.
Yeah, for sure. And, when you sent this scripture out, I'm like, because I'm reading out the King James, and you know how the King James is sometimes. I'm like, how is this going to tie in? But it's so good because I'm reading here about how Paul, he did not hesitate to share his sinful past with his audience, Yeah. And that's one thing I've always told people. I'm not ashamed of what I used to do back in the day because that formed who I am now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we go through those things, and we go through the trials and the tribulations and things like that to build our character not only as a human, but as a Christian.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, man, that was really good.
Yeah.
So, and it's not to be, at that time, Paul risked being embarrassed from all the people. He risked his life.
He risked his life, yeah. He ended up getting beheaded because of it.
Because of it later on. But,
Yeah.
Man, I'll tell you, that's crazy. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, man.
Good stuff, gentlemen. Amen all the way.
So we're going to get into a couple more things here just real quick, Jason, and we'll let you go. So you mentioned Obsession Bows. You guys had done a couple of giveaways there with some of the calls that we done for Obsession Bows. And that went really well.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. That went really well.
Yeah, it did, Mike, and thank you so much. I was going to say that we were out at the ATA show, and I knew sort of going out there. Jackson didn't know, but when we were out there, we we're going to get the opportunity to meet Mr. Dennis Lewis, and Mr. Lewis was the one who was the founder and creator of Obsession Bows down in Georgia, American made. And that they were going because I've shot the Matthew. I mean, there's nothing against Matthews or Bowtech. They're all great companies, right? It's just to each their own. And when I settled on Obsession in 2014, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the speed. I fell in love just everything about the bow. And I think I have 4 now. And I bought Jackson one, and we went to the ATA show in 2000, I think it was 2019, we went to the ATA show. He shot every bow down there he could shoot. And I didn't steer him to Obsession. I just asked him to shoot the Obsession. Shoot every one you want, but be sure and shoot the Obsession. Well, he was pretty much sold on Matthews, and he had a mission. So he was going to move from mission to Matthews, and that's great. I'm going to support him, and again, not going to push him. And he went over and he shot that Obsession hashtag. And I knew when he shot it, he didn't look back at me. He didn't give me a head wiggle or a shoulder shrug, or he didn't do nothing. He reached down and grabbed him another arrow and he shot it. He shot the second one. He turned back to me. He could not smile. He just could not keep the smile off his face. And I call him Bubby, and I said, Bubby, what is it? He goes, Dad, I just wasn't expecting that. And I said, well, what is it? He goes, it's really good. He goes, I like it better than anyone. I said, and I always say, I graduated University of Kentucky, and I said, Jackson, where do you want to go to college? He goes, University of Kentucky. I go, no, listen, Georgia's a great school. Florida's an incredible academic school down in Gainesville. Vanderbilt is essentially what you would call an Ivy League school of the South. I said, I try to talk him out of it. And so when he told me about Obsession, I said, Jackson, you don't have to shoot Obsession because I do. He goes, no, Dad, I'm telling you, I really like it. And he loved it. And he shot it, and we sent a couple pictures and got in contact with them, and they really liked what he was doing on YouTube and how he was, sort of changing his or kind of chasing a passion, right? He was turning a passion of his into a form of art through social media with Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. And so we knew that they were going to sign him. And I did. And so we went out there and they made the announcement at the ATA show and they made postings about it. And I was touched. And so I asked Nature's Voice Game Calls if they would make for me 4 friction calls with the Obsession logo in it. And I gave one to Mr. Dennis Lewis. I gave one to John and Gina Brunson. I gave one to Joel and Shonda Miller, who is the general manager there at Martin Bows and Obsession. And Shonda does some of the creative stuff and marketing stuff, and she's just a wonderful person. And then we had one left, and we decided to give it away on Instagram. And I think it got 36,000 plays, and we gave it to this really neat father-daughter. It's a dad that has 2 daughters, and he's gotten his 2 daughters into archery and bow hunting, and they're out in North Dakota. And so, it's amazing how you can reach people now through social media and interactions and shared content, and what you guys are doing here with the podcast and other things. I mean, we're all working men and women, and we're all trying to raise our family, and we're all trying to do the right thing, and we're just trying to pay our bills and have some time and give our kids a little bit more of an opportunity than what we had probably growing up, and, try to keep them on the straight and narrow. And, raise them in faith and family and those sort of things.
Yeah.
And so it was wonderful to give that away. But I appreciate you all, jumping in there and helping me out. And they all loved them. Everybody's
Good.
received them. Now, John and Gina, theirs actually, theirs sort of shipped out late because we were waiting till we got some footage for them, and we just all packaged it up and sent it to them as a care package. And
Yeah.
so they're going to get theirs. I think it's delivered on Thursday to their production company. So
That's awesome.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, we appreciate you and, including us in that. I mean, we appreciate you asking us to do that. It was an honor for us to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, and we're going to try to probably do some other giveaways. Jackson's been able to develop, some other partners within the outdoor industry and hunting industry, and so I'm look forward to doing some other giveaways, down the road here, and build on the success that we had with you all in our partnership, and the game calls that you guys made for us, the turkey calls. So it's great.
Awesome. So you guys kind of had a name change from J&J Outdoors to Hunt Next. Is this the start of a new brand?
Dan, so when Jackson wanted to create a little YouTube page, and I again tried talking him out of it for a number of years, and finally I relented, a year and a half ago. He started in the fall of 2021. I think October was the first time he ever videotaped himself, and a little bit of the hunt, all that. And I just sort of let him go with it. He wanted to come up with a name, and he came up with that. And obviously J&J is for Jackson and Jason, which is, and he wanted J&J Outdoors, and he created a little logo for it. He really liked it. And then he just sort of got down the road, and we were driving somewhere, I had Hunt Next. I had Hunt Next for a number of years. And to me, a Hunt Next is just, right. We got office jobs and day jobs, and we're foremen, and we work at different places. And then, hunting season comes around, we turn into a bunch of rednecks, and we're running around, and, nobody chews or dips anymore. But it seems like if you get to hunting camp, those old bad tendencies come back or something, and you're dropping your R's and your G's, and all those things sort of. And I'm from Boone County, so I've always tried to hide my redneck because I work in a sort of corporate world, and I just tell people I'm just an old country lobbyist from Boone County, and my daddy was a coal miner. His daddy was a coal miner. I mean, I came from a straight line of coal mining parents and grandparents. So I'm not better than anybody out there. I'm just trying to raise the family and raise my son. And so anyway, we came up with Hunt Next years ago, and I've never asked him to use it. And he turned to me one day, we're driving down the road, and he goes, "I want to change the name of J&J to Hunt Next." And I go, "Well, why do you want to do that?" Because, I'm always trying to challenge him and his beliefs to make sure that he is, he has this core set of values.
Yeah.
And he said, "Dad," he said, "man, that's just what we are. We're Hunt Next. We're just always out there, whether we're fishing, we're hunting for tarpon, we're hunting for redfish." He said, if we're hunting for turkeys, we're hunting for boar. He said, I go to school, you work, and you wear a suit, and you go to the Capitol, and you come home on the weekends, and we put on our boots, and we jump in the truck, and we head across to Ohio, and we, get the motorcycles and the four-wheelers out, and we get muddy and dirty. And he said, then we got to get cleaned up on Sunday night and get ready for Monday. And I was like, he gets it, right?
That's awesome.
Absolutely, he gets it.
Yeah, he sure does.
That's what it's about. I mean, it's about, working through the week and getting to the weekend and spending time with your family and friends, and, carrying on the tradition that was passed down to us from our forefathers and our uncles and our grandparents and all those people.
That's what I love about this podcast, man. I mean, just like you telling the story there when you all first started going hunting this year, and different things like that. People's not going to hear that other than if it's in your circle, And right. I like for stories like that to get out for other people to hear them, as long as people are willing to let it, be told.
Sure.
And it's always, I've said this many a times, it's like standing around deer camping by the fire, but it's spring now. So, well, Jason, we appreciate you coming on this evening. We've had a great time. It's always a good time having you on. So,
well, keep in touch, and you boys keep rocking and rolling. I love what you're doing,
Yeah, we appreciate it.
My pastor has a simple saying, and that is keep going. And so
Yes.
I just say to y'all, keep going.
Thank you,
Keep
sir.
doing it.
We sure appreciate
We
you.
appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Dan, good night. Dave, good night. See you all. Good night.
All right,
Good night.
thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Jason. All right, guys. Be sure to check us out on the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls on our Facebook page. Be sure to check us out on our live video that we just done there this evening. That was our first Facebook live video. So we had a couple mix-ups and mess-ups, but hey, that comes with the growing pains, right? So
Absolutely.
we'll get those kinks worked out as we go. But be sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, and we're on about 20 other different networks. We've got some really big events coming up this week. We leave tomorrow afternoon, so be sure to tune in next week and possibly get a bonus round coming this weekend. So
Yeah, we may do some lives too.
yep, may do some lives coming up.
What
So
we're looking into.
trying to. Thank you all for listening this evening. Everybody have a great night.
Good night, guys.
This episode of On the Limb with Nature's Voice Game Calls is brought to you by Carts Towing and Timco Auto Transport. Local and long-distance towing, auto recovery, roadside assistance, auto lockouts, and jump starts. And they also do repossessions. Give them a call today at 304-949-2323 or 304-925-0858. Again, that's Carts Towing and Timco Auto Transport, 304-949-2323, 304-925-0858.